Thank you so much for coming.
Nice to be here. Everybody doing okay? Good, good.
How's your day here so far?
Oh, I'm having a grand time. Wonderful people, every one of you. Thank you for being so sweet.
So I have a couple of questions all over the place, various things, and we can take from the audience. So I read in several places that after your stint in the armed services, that you were a ranch hand and horse wrangler and an extra in westerns. Is this true?
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate?
Well, I was what they call a horseback extra. I could get along around a saddle, a horse and a team and a wagon and a stagecoach and whatnot. So there was plenty of work for a guy like me then. And made a lot of westerns, and that's what I did. And I was a horseshoer too, so I knew my way around that and made a living.
So doing that kind of work and knowing your way around horses, how did it lead to becoming an extra though, in like maybe television westerns or film westerns?
Say it again?
Knowing your way around horses, how did it lead to getting work as an extra?
Well, that's what they hired me to do, was ride horses and drive wagons and stuff like that.
Oh, so they hired you to do that, okay.
It was my job.
Now, you were so familiar to me and to others over the years in television in smaller roles. There was a part in the Waltons. Everyone remember that? And,
You got good memories. I don't remember it.
but I think one of your first major film credits was in the China Syndrome.
It was.
Where you got to work alongside Jack Lemmon. Can you recall anything about that film of interest?
I recall a lot about that film. It was the first time I was ever offered what you might call a pivotal role in a film. And up to that point, I'd been doing this horseback bullshit, you know. I get away with that pretty good, but now they give me all this dialogue, and I asked for it. I thought, you know, I wouldn't have to hit the ground anymore. I could be a big actor, star, and all that. Here's all this dialogue, and it scared me to death. And I remember the first day that I was to be photographed, I thought, well, this is not a good day. This is when they find out I got no idea what I'm doing. But I got away with it okay, and it led to more work, so here we sit.
Well, I love you. So, now that's interesting, because that first major film, Jack Lemmon, then you wound up working with Paul Newman, Absence of Malice. Robert Redford in The Electric Horseman, Brubaker, The Natural. Charles? And everybody loves you in The Natural. And then I forgot, you were in the Charles Bronson film, 10 to Midnight, because I was just watching it recently. And I said, oh my God, you were in that too. And, you know, Tender Mercies, of course, or Robert Duvall. So
the list goes on ad infinitum.
The list goes on. So of those batches of favorites, films of mine, is there one that you really enjoyed or worked like? Was it like Brubaker, Electric Horseman, The Natural is like a favorite of yours?
I can't remember which one paid the most, but that would be my favorite. See, I'm not one of those guys. I'm not an actor that sits around talking about the wonderful work or the incredible performance. I don't know much about that, but I know about payday. I know about kids, raise the kids, pay the bill. I know that. And I've been able to do that thanks to you people. I ask God to bless every one of you, because without you, there's no industry. There's no film industry. There's no stage plays. See, you make the ship run, and I thank you for that.
Did you get along well with Robert Redford? Because you worked with him a few times.
You know, I made a deal. If you can't say anything good about somebody, don't say anything. I can say something good about him. We worked together in a film called The Natural, and in one scene, I never stood opposite a better actor.
Wow.
And it's a scene where he shows up after his illness and wants to play ball. And we had a little exchange there that was really nice. And I appreciated that very much.
So, have you been getting questions at the show about John Carpenter's The Thing?
Some.
Okay. So,
Did you have one?
I would be one of, what, 3,000? So, a generic question. What did you like about that film, or did you not like that film?
Sure, I had a great experience with it. John Carpenter's a wonderful man. And he's one of the few that understand what directors are supposed to do. So most of them get confused. Most of them think they're conductors and tell you as your left foot hits the ground, look over your shoulder and fart. And it's not what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be the first audience. They're supposed to watch the work and be the first audience. And if there's something they don't believe, or there's some trouble spot, or something, they're supposed to then work with the cast and find out what the problem is and solve it together. And John Carpenter is very, very good at that.
About the practical effects, though, that were in some of those scenes, that was like one of the first films, I think, that did that in such a manner. What did yourself, and probably the other actors, think about working with,
The rubber dogs?
The rubber dogs.
I'll tell you how I felt about it. I felt like I was violated in a certain way. You know, is there anybody here over 75 years old? Sports. Well, okay. You got time for me to tell you a little story? All right, when I was a kid, I used to go to the movies on Saturday with my little brother on the handlebars of my bicycle. And every Saturday was, along with the 2 shoot-'em-up Western movies, was a serial of some kind. And it was The Shadow, or The Invisible Man, or one of those kind of things. And they scare the bejesus out of you. But you didn't see them. So you, as an audience participant, were responsible to create in your mind, what is that thing that scares me so bad? And when the special effects got to the point where they could do rubber dogs with slime and babies that looked like warts, I felt like I was robbed. I felt like somebody took away from me the right and the opportunity to create in my mind what it was that scared me. Now, after I say that, the best special effects I've ever seen, bar none, are in the thing. If that's what you want to talk about. The kid that did that, a kid named Rob Boutin, I think when he did that, he was 19 or 20 years old, something like that. Not a funny thing. When I was a 19-year-old kid, I dreamed of pretty girls at night. Slimy dogs. Something wrong there. Go ahead.
So I have another question. Maybe this, that's good. I have another question, and maybe this is asked of you too. It looks like this is one of the few films that look cold while you're watching it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Like you're watching a movie like this where it's set and that they lose the power, so like if they're getting cold, you're feeling cold, it looks blue and things are bleak.
Well, it was cold. We did it on a sound stage, every inch of it, except the opener. Someone went up to British Columbia and flew around the helicopter, but every inch of the film, other than the opener, was done inside a sound stage at Universal Studios. The temperature inside that sound stage was 40 degrees. And you are cold. That's why you act cold. You're freezing cold.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that thought of that, because I'm sure other people were going to ask you that, or they already have. So, this came up yesterday, and Ron Howard's Cocoon, which you're well remembered for, and it became an internet meme, because I believe you're not as old as the age you were playing in that film for your character, right?
I am now.
So, do you have a...
Caught up.
Do you have a remembrance, fond or not, about Cocoon?
Oh, that was a wonderful experience. Here I am by the accident of birth. I'm a cowboy from the Rocky Mountain Northwest. And I was tossed into a cast of, for instance, the lady that played my wife in that movie was referred to as the first lady of the American stage, Maureen Stapleton, the Glass Menagerie and all those. Jessica Tandy, she created the role of Blanche Dubois from Streetcar Named Desire. Hume Cronin, Academy Award winner. Gwen Verdon had legs clear up to her ass. Dancer, beautiful dancer. Jack Guilford, funny little guy. You want to hear what he said to me? Yeah, all right, now, he's a New York Jew, professional. And he said to me, he said, so when you go to New York, where do you like to eat? I said, I like to go to the Carnegie Deli and have a corned beef sandwich on rye bread. He said, killed more Jews than Hitler. And he and I became really good friends. And but the guy out of that whole deal that became my buddy was Don Amici. Stiffest actor I ever been around in my life. You want to hear a story about him?
Yes.
Dead now. Amici. true. Every morning, regardless of what time the deal started, every morning was he'd take a walk. And he walked 6 miles. So that'd tell you how early he had to get up, if it was a 7 or 8 o'clock call, but he did it. And he would tuck 2, not 3, not 1, but 2 grains of brown rice in the crack of his ass before he went on his walk. And I said to him one time, I said, Amish, why in the world do you do that? He said, keeps me rigid, my boy. I said, well, it's working. Now, we had a scene to do, Hume Cronin, Don Amici, and myself. We're standing on the dock looking out here, and we're seeing this weird stuff go on. And we're talking back to the 3 of us. And one guy says, I don't know who those people are, and I don't know what they're doing. My line was, I don't know either. Maybe they're drug smugglers. And then Amish says, let me have a look at it. I was in the Navy. That's pretty much the dialogue. And the kid said, the director said, action, and we did that, and I flubbed my line. I said, maybe they're dope smokers. And I glanced at Amish, and I got a look. I never got a look of disgust like that in my life. And so the kid said, cut, we'll do it again. And Don Amici, he looked at me and he said, now, I can help you if you're having trouble with your line. And I saw a look on his face at that moment I'd not seen before. And I decided in my mind, I'm never going to give this guy the right cue again. And I never gave him the right cue, and he won a goddamn Oscar. Because he had to listen, you see. He didn't know what was coming, so he had to listen and respond in kind. And he was brilliant, and I love his memory.
And the favorites keep coming. Remo Williams.
I don't know what to say about that. They were going to make 7 of those movies. They were going to try to move the 007 over and make this kid that guy. But it didn't work. We did one of them, and it was fun. I worked 1 day on that movie in Mexico City at the Churubusco Studios. So I don't remember much about it.
But sometimes your smaller appearances, whether it was like a police lieutenant or police captain or FBI person or just a man who's in charge, is so memorable in so many of these movies. It's like you remember that so much.
Good, that gets me another job.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed you in Hard Target, the John Woo film, riding that horse. And was it bow and an arrow, right? Bow and arrow or something like that? You had a bow and arrow in the scene?
Yes, I was a bow and arrow guy. And that's a funny thing. They put me horseback in that movie. And that didn't bother me. I told you before, I understand that, get around that okay. But poor Van Damme, he was scared to death of a horse for some reason. So they doubled him. And I said to him, I said, John, what's the matter? Why? He said, I eat horse. horse? No, I eat horse. He's from Belgium, and they hired me to be his uncle, and he couldn't do my accent, so I had to stumble through his. It worked okay.
Did you guys get along while working in that?
Oh, yeah. Sure. I like that. He's the greatest athlete I've ever been around. I actually saw him jump up in the air, kick a door jamb 3 times, and land on his feet. Wow. Try that sometime.
Someone's lucky we can get up. So
no, he was an amazing athlete. Just amazing.
And do you have any memories of John Woo, the director? That was his first American film.
John Woo, he called me maestro. I think that's the only, and that's not an English word, is it? But that's all he could say, other than Chinese stuff. He had a translator guy, and I said to him, I said, ask him what he wants me to do here. And so he went in, and he come back and he said, Mr. Wu says, you tell the maestro to do whatever he feels like. He'll be fine. Wow. That's all the direction I got. I love the guy.
I have a question, but I want to see if anybody has questions here for you. Anyone? Yes, sir.
Did you know ahead of time, before filming, that you were going to be the grand finale monster for the thing?
I can't hear.
The grand finale?
The grand finale monster for the thing. Like the big, like...
Oh, for the thing, for John Carpenter's The Thing. Did you know early on, working on that film, that your face was going to be portion of the grand monster?
Did I know that my belly was going to pop open and I'd eat no Alaska?
Well, no. Like, there were several things.
No, that was...
But did you know you were going to be like the big finale?
No.
The big, ending?
No. No.
It was cool though.
Anyone else? So I have a question about, you're well remembered for your commercial work. Quaker Oats. Seriously. People have been quoting me the Quaker Oats commercials because they knew I was going to do this today, and I said, wow, you're right. Does anyone ever bring that up to you, like that they remember you from?
Oh, sure, still, yeah. I worked for that company for 10 years, and it was a wonderful 10 years, and it was a great company. We got off to on the wrong foot to start with, but it came around, and we became fast friends and colleagues, and worked out fine. Worked good for them and better for me, and all of that.
How did you get off on the wrong foot?
Well, when I was approached by that, it was an ad agency, George McGrath case. I was hired to use my face, my name, and endorse that product, which I was happy to do because I grew up eating Quaker Oats, and. When I got to the studio on the first day, there was a kid director there trying to make his bones, I guess. He had the stage filled with smoke, and he had a script that I'd never seen before. He had a lot of ideas about what should happen when my left foot hit the ground, and I looked, that kind of stuff. And I just said to the production kid, I said, I'm sorry, I see myself getting in a lot of trouble here. So before this gets started and we get lawyers and shit like that going on, I'm not going to do this. So stone boy. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, back to the other story. The guy comes, there's a group of people in a table in the back who happen to be the client, and he came out and he introduced himself. His name was Brusque, and he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, it's not what I agreed to do." He said, "What did you agree to do?" And I said, "I agreed to use my face, my name, and endorse this product. I didn't agree to say silly little things like that. I'm not a product hawker." So he said, well, how did you figure to do that? And I said, well, I could show you rather than tell you. Well, he said, I'd love to see it. So I said, well, get the smoke out of here. Get the ambiance out of here. And put a camera there, and I'll sit in this chair and I'll do that for you, and if you like it, we'll go on. Otherwise, we can part friends. He said, that's fair enough. And so I thought about it. What am I going to say now that I've said I'm going to say it? And they turned the camera on, and here's what I said. I said, as a boy, I remember my mother standing over a hot stove cooking oatmeal. We weren't wealthy, and we could afford that, and it was healthy, good food. I could still smell it and taste it, and it was wonderful, and besides that, it was the right thing to do. And with that little thing right there, the company won the annual commercial Oscar, Clio they called it. And so for 10 years, that's what we did. I endorsed the product using my name and my face, and we got along with it pretty good.
And we all remember that so well. I do, I'm sure a lot of you do. Anyone? Yes, sir.
Yeah, on Seinfeld, when you were Postmaster General, I believe, did they audition you, or did they pick you specifically for that part?
They must have picked me. I was, you want to hear about that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd never seen that show. And I haven't seen much of it since. But I was driving in my pickup truck across the north end of Nevada. I'd been to a branding in Winnemucca, and I just got a cell phone. And it rang, and it was the girl from the agent's office who said, boy, have I got big news for you. I said, I'm dying to hear it. She said, you've been offered a guest star on Seinfeld. And I said, okay. Were they going to pay me to do that? She said, oh, top of the show. Well, I understood what that was. I'd turned that down before. And I said, well, I'm not interested in that. He said, excuse me, do you understand what you're saying? I said, I think so. Well, this is the #1 show in the history of television. I said, well, I haven't seen it. She said, well, that's the offer. Top of the show. I said, you mean like $17.50 a week? Yeah. I said, well, you call them back and tell them I'm flattered. I got more than that on me. She called back in about an hour and she said, they've upped the offer. Okay. And then they upped it again and again. I said, finally, I said, look, Nancy, you're sweet, they're sweet. I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing a lot of episodic television right now. I'm the flavor of the month in some of these movies, and I prefer that. She said, finally she called back, she said, they really want you. What would you do it for? And I told her a number that was ridiculous. Because I was tired of talking. She said, well, they're not going to pay that. And I said, well, I wouldn't. and they did. None of your business.
That's almost the best way to end this, but if anybody else have any? Yes, sir, in the back.
How does it feel to be part of the Star Wars legacy, the Ewok movie, Battle for Endor?
Is that what that makes me?
I grew up with that movie. It's part of my childhood.
Well, that was fun. All the little guys in that movie, they were from The Wizard of Oz, a lot of them. And I got to be friends with them. It was okay. It was all right. Worst two directors I ever been around. Yes. Ask her, she's right there.
What was your favorite movie? Really? Who was your favorite actor that you worked with?
All right, we're going to take one last question. You in the back? Yes.
Absence of Malice, one of my favorite movies. It's still relevant today. It came right in at the end and stole the whole picture. Do you have any memories or stories from that one?
Oh, sure. That was the director, Sidney Pollack. Yeah, he understood what that was all about. And excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. He hired me to do that role, and he said, now, I'm going to bring you to Florida a couple of days before you go to work, and we'll do the job, and then I'm going to bus you out of town, so that's how that'll be. And I looked at it, and I read it, and I thought, boy, whoever wrote this was some kind of writer. And I went in, they lit the stage, and they had, I think, 4 cameras working at the time. And we did that scene in one day, in one take. And it was so well written and so well directed that the rest of it just kind of fell in place. And I got a lot of satisfaction by being in that movie, in that scene, because, see, I didn't know any of those people. I didn't know Paul Newman. I knew who Paul Newman was, and I know who the Flying Nun was, but I didn't know them, and they didn't know me. And after we did that scene, Newman, he came up to me and he said, how did they come and get you for this part? And I said, well, yeah. He said, you're a lawyer, right? And I felt like a giant because I'd fooled him. And I said, well, no, but I'd like to be, so. And subsequent to that, Paul Newman hired me to play his brother in a mediocre movie that he wrote and directed. But I was thrilled and delighted to become a friend with that guy. On a political spectrum, I'm 2 notches to the right of Attila the Hun. And Paul Newman is a liberal. And I loved him. And I love his mentor.
Well, that's all the time we have for. Thank you so much for coming. And please, again, a nice round of applause for Wilford Brimley.